Are you wondering what cards to buy for Commander right now? We've got the cards that are most worth buying in a list right here.
I'm Mia, and I like sleeping on planes.
I'm BZ. I could not possibly sleep on a plane if you paid me, but guess who does pay us to sponsor videos? Card Kingdom, and we're going to recommend that you use their website not only because they have great singles and great prices and free shipping on orders $50 or more, but also because there's a new Nitpicking Nerds landing page that you have not seen before. It's really cool. It shows our picks, and it's like a customized thing that we helped them build, and we're super happy with it. So if you want to show support for the channel, best way to do it is to go over there to buy all of your Magic singles.
You can pre-order Modern Horizons 3 Commander decks and the boxes there, along with getting singles for the decks right now. Go check it out. We're also sponsored by Dragon Shield, best sleeves in the multiverse.
Good sleeves.
If you use the code
NERDS
at checkout, you save 5 whole percentage of your real money tax dollars on your entire order, and they have binders, they have storage, they have sleeves, they have everything.
And we're sponsored by Moxfield, but not right now. We're going to be sponsored by them later, and you're going to have to guess where it is. But if you don't guess where it is, you are a coward, and if you do guess where it is and you are right, you are a liar. So the only correct thing to do is to guess and be wrong, and I will give you a little heart in the comments. Also, if you're looking to support the channel directly and you want a little bit of extra bonus content that you can't get on YouTube, that's where Patreon comes in. We can audit your deck personally. We can give you some gameplay. We can give you a podcast that gives you behind-the-scenes stuff that we really can't talk about on YouTube. So that's an option for you, and we would appreciate it.
We really would. It helps send the cats to college, and we were talking about our new Dance Gavin Dance video right on there.
We were in that music video. Totally random, totally a thing that happened. So we've got Commander cards most worth buying for the month of June. If you're looking to save some time by doing your own research, we've got cards that are super worth their price. You can buy a couple of them, 1 or 2, put them in your decks. We're not talking about massive speculation. However, at the end of the video, we will be talking about cards we are currently speculating on with hopes that they will go up as a money grabbing thing. But this is purely for quality Commander cards.
The rest is just competition between us, as we often do. The first one that we're going to talk about is our top-rated card from Murders at Karlov Manor. It is Archdruid's Charm at $13. Green, green, green for an instant, and you could choose one. You either search your library for a creature or a land, and then put it onto the battlefield tapped if it's a land, and then otherwise you put it into a hand and shuffle. You put a 1/1 creature and it deals damage to a creature you don't control, or you exile a target artifact or enchantment. That does a lot for 3 mana.
And it's not even 3 decisions. You get 5 decisions. It searches for a creature or a land, or it's a bite spell, or you exile an artifact, or you exile an enchantment. I just don't know what this card's doing, but it is super powered. And it's funny because when you were like, it's the best card from Murders at Karlov Manor, I was like, what? And then I was like, oh yeah, that was a set that came out.
Yeah.
Nobody really cared about it, but this was not even a sleeper. This was very loudly the best card in the set. I don't think that set was opened a ton, and I would definitely be happy to pick one up for $13.
I think it's very useful. It can be slotted into any deck where you can use the pips pretty effectively, and I think that it won't be reprinted anytime soon. I think 13's about where it's settled. I don't see this getting a reprint in like a list.
Maybe not the rest for like this year, you know, it's good for this year.
I think you're going to have a bit of time, and as we saw with some other cards that saw a lot of play, like Meat Hook and stuff, I know that was more in standard and stuff, but that skyrocketed, and at the beginning you could have picked it up for pretty cheap. So I think that this is going to do one of those, and if it's not reprinted for a bit, it's going to climb up in price.
But this is good for any deck where you have any creature that you want to find with more consistency than 1 in 100. If you've got toolboxy type cards, if you've got a lot of creatures that enter and kill something or draw you cards, or if you've got Field of the Dead in your deck, or any utility land, you got a Gaia's Cradle that you picked up, or you have a proxy, this goes and finds it for 3 mana at instant speed. Your opponents don't even know what you're doing until you fire it off end step.
This is also great because if you have like Rex Sage in your deck and you don't have flicker effects or like elf or creature synergies with it specifically, this can replace it because it's the same amount of mana, but it exiles it and then does a bunch of stuff on top of it.
It seriously just does it all. It slices and dices and it does 8 more things. It's like a slap chop. It's basically the slap chop of Magic. Our next card, now Modern Horizons 3 is coming out, but that means that when the allied color fetch lands get reprinted, they will be going down, and we're going to be talking about them later. But right now, we're talking about the other fetch lands, the enemy fetch lands. On Card Kingdom right now, Marsh Flats and Scalding Tarn and those group, that 5, are between $19 and $25 max. Scalding Tarn used to be a $100 card. These are some of the best lands ever printed full stop. Probably the best cycle of lands ever printed full stop. And you can get them for around $20 each.
You know that when the one cycle starts getting reprinted and it goes down, the other cycle immediately jumps in value. And that's
eventually, yeah.
These have been slowly climbing for a bit. I mean, basically every deck wants them if you have the money to run them and you like genuinely want to put them in your deck. But they're the best lands, or one of them at least.
Yeah, if you found like $60 on the ground and you wanted to spend it on Magic, I would pretty much just advise you to buy 3 fetch lands from this group at random because I know they're going to be good investments. They're going to go in literally any deck you build. Even if you have a mono white deck, you can still play Marsh Flats to go find like Idyllic Grange or Misfill Plains. These lands are obscene. They give you perfect mana. They give you extra landfall triggers, shuffling your library, cards in your graveyard, permanents in your graveyard, permanents entering the battlefield. They do a little too much. So they're very, very strong. And for $20-ish, definitely pick them up if you can.
I mean, they're also stars in multiple formats. So if you do decide that, I'm not feeling it in this commander deck, but I want to play modern or something, this could definitely work for that.
Absolutely. What's our next card?
Our next card is Exquisite Blood at $22. 4 and a black for an enchantment. Whenever an opponent loses life, you gain that much life. This has combos with the Sanguine Blood type triggers, but this is not replaceable because this is the only of its type, unlike Sanguine Bond, which has like Veto and other effects like it.
Yeah, Wizards isn't too keen on printing whenever your opponents lose life, you gain life, but there are 100 versions of whenever you gain life, they lose life. And those two sentences are reverses of each other, so they go infinite when you have them together. And for a while, this was like $60, maybe even more. And now it's down to 22 because they got a very relevant reprint. And I'm just happy to scoop one up. If you've been holding out and you didn't want this card because it totally wasn't worth the money, now I think it's definitely worth $22 if you've got a life gain deck and you want to add now a new combo that'll help you end games faster.
I mean, 22 is a good price point for a win con if you have the money to spend for it. People are spending more of that on like Crater Hoof and stuff.
We just told you to spend $20 on your fetch lands.
And this is a irreplaceable part of that synergistic combo. So I do think this is great. It's really funny because I bought the Secret Lair, the Welcome to Dracula, whatever.
It was called Welcome to Dracula.
Yeah, because this was in it, and that was a really great deal at the time because this was the cheapest version you could get of it, and it was 40 something then, and now it's 22, and I would highly recommend picking it up.
I think you're right. This is probably one of the least replaceable commander cards, just in general. Like, you're not going to find this. It's not like, you can play this bad common from this other set. It's like this text box just doesn't exist.
You could probably find something incremental. It's like you gain 1 or something, but you can't find this exact box, and so it is really important. You can't even find it if it has like 3 more mana tacked onto it.
We are going to go to the next card. It's called Intruder Alarm, and it is consistently one of the most busted cards when you look back at it. And when new commanders come out, people go, oh my god, did you see the new infinite combo with Intruder Alarm? And then some brave soldier on Reddit is like, wow, guys, finally we broke Intruder Alarm. Just because that's how silly Intruder Alarm is. It goes infinite with a ham sandwich. It's only $2.79 right now, and it's 2 to blue for an enchantment. Creatures don't untap, but whenever a creature enters the battlefield, untap all creatures. So the first part of it kind of reads like a stacks piece, but the second part of it means that it's not a stacks piece. It's really just going to be a circus, and whoever can take advantage of this absolutely nonsensical reward for all players, the most wins. Obviously, that's going to be you.
Yeah, if you have a lot of like cheap mana dorks, for instance, this can generate tons of mana instantly. And it's not like, as BZ said, it's not like, this is a stacks piece. No, if you put this down, people should be afraid, and if they can't kill it, they're probably going to lose in the next turn or two.
I can throw this out because I think this is a fair comparison. Even though Paradox Engine is banned, but in the decks where this is good, it's basically just another one of those. Whenever you do anything, you untap all of your resources that are creatures. You're a deck full of creatures because you put Intruder Alarm in your deck. So now all your mana dorks, all of your like Shorikais or whatever creatures have activated abilities can just be activated over and over and over. This loves Cryptolith, right? They're best friends forever. And it's a card, whenever I see it, I have alarm bells go off. And it's so, so cheap right now.
I run this in Galadriel, and it is so amazing in there because I'm running so many mana dorks, which just helps me get more creatures out, which untaps them. And with Galadriel's abilities of stuff entering the battlefield, it just means more cards in my hand and just more shenanigans going on.
Yeah, if you even want to try this card, I think $3 or less is a totally fair price. Like, even if it ends up being too broken, you spent basically nothing. It's kind of a free roll.
I mean, before Wilds, it was at what, like $10 or something?
It was creeping up there, but the standard reprint of this card totally tanked it, and we're happy to pick it up.
Absolutely. And I'm not just saying that because I picked up a couple.
I mean, we just picked them up because we knew we were going to use them.
Yeah, and I used it immediately with Galadriel. Mm-hmm. The next card is a card that is amazing in decks that also run a ton of creatures, and it could possibly be free. It's Clever Concealment at $14. 2 white for an instant, but it has Convoke. Any number of target non-land permanents you control phase out. So this can be a clever little trick you have up your sleeve where you just convoke a bunch of tokens you just made because they couldn't swing for anything anyways, and they just phase out if a board wipe happens.
This is a fine way to dodge a board wipe. It feels about on par with all of the other ones, the Eerie Interludes, the Semester's Ends, those types of cards. But the fact that it has Convoke totally changes everything because now I can tap out and no one's going to suspect a thing. I have 4 creatures untapped. I just made them, like you said. Who is going to put me on this card? Who's going to say they have Clever Concealment in their hand, so now I'm not going to wipe the board? And sometimes you can't decide anyway. It's like, BZ has 30 creatures. I have to wipe the board. Boom, surprise. Now your plans are ruined and you're going to lose the game because my creatures are just going to be here still.
It's also target non-land permanents. So if you are afraid of certain enchantments or artifacts getting blown up, those are also safe with this. You just need to either have the mana or the creatures to pay for it.
I think a lot of the time, I know people like to think that Teferi's Protection is better than this card, and maybe overall it is. But when you can cast this with Convoke, I think it's a better card in some circumstances. Teferi's has the corner case of sometimes you're going to die to damage, or it's a fog and it has that going for it. But if we're just talking board wipes, I'd rather have clever Concealment.
I think it definitely depends with Teferi's Protection. I do like the card quite a lot, but I do admit that if you have a lot of creatures, Convoke can be very handy to have in your back pocket.
Cards we've historically not been happy with. I don't really like playing Heroic Intervention and that type of indestructible trick because I don't think it saves my creatures from enough board wipes. Clever Concealment saves your creatures and all of your non-land permanents from every board wipe, guaranteed. Like, there's no rifting this, there's no Tragic Arrogancing, there's no Toxic Deluge. I'm gone. My creatures and stuff is not here.
Indestructible is too specific.
Too flimsy.
We have Sacrifice, we have Exile, we have, Bounce. It's
Farewell.
It's just not good enough nowadays. It might have been good 5-10 years ago, but today, it's not holding up.
You know what is holding up? The stitched edges of these playmats. That was actually a better segue than I was expecting. But the Nitpicking Nerds has playmats. And now this is important for a couple of reasons. Number 1, they're awesome. They are high quality. Number 2, Amber is on this one, and she's Queen Meowcheza, and I just think it's the cutest thing ever. We're super happy with these. They are high quality. But the third thing is that they're only available for you watching this at this point. It is June 3rd, right?
I think today would be your last day to get them.
Today is the last day you could possibly order them through GamerMats. So we have the link in the description. If you're seeing this, you better hurry to the link, actually. Take a break, because this is the final day to get the Amber and Miso mats. After today, there will be 0 produced, and the only ones that will exist are going to be the ones that we already have in our possession.
So go check it out. And there's a bundle if you're looking for all 3. We have 3 designs total, and you can get a little bit of a discount.
Yeah, definitely a great way to support the channel and support yourself and support your cards with an awesome little mat. So we're going to get back to the cards. We got cards more. We're only a third of the way done with our cards. We have a Planeswalker next, and it's a very, very good one. Liliana Dreadhorde General, $12. 6 mana, starts at 6 loyalty. Static ability, when your creatures die, you draw a card. +1, make it 2/2. -4, each player sacrifices 2 creatures. -9, basically you win the game. Each opponent chooses a permanent they control of each type and sacrifices the rest. That means they go down to 1 land, 1 creature, 1 enchantment, etc. I don't know how anyone comes back from that when you just ultimated this.
It is really, really good. I'm surprised to see that it's the foil version that's at $12. But just the card draw alone stapled onto this is really nice. Plus the effect that even if you get each player sacks 2 creatures and then you draw 2 cards out of it,
that's an 8 for 1?
Yeah, that is an amazing effect.
Yeah, this card is kind of bonkers. We don't like Planeswalkers generally because it's such a coin flip if I'm going to actually untap with it. With Liliana, most of the time what happens is you play it, minus it, destroy their board state. They probably can't attack it for a ton, and even if they can, we just described an 8 for 1, which just involves having 2 creatures and playing this card. Like, this card is the real deal, and in the best case scenarios, you play it, plus it, start creeping up to the ultimate, which isn't that important, but now whenever you play Magic and you do the things your deck was going to do anyway, you kill creatures, you start drawing cards.
I mean, you're going to put this in a deck where you can usually self-sacrifice things anyways. So in the decks where you have like Ashnod's Altar and stuff, maybe you're sacking it for mana, you draw more cards, you already have the mana floating, you play more cards. It's just like a self-feeding cycle. It's a good one.
It's a card that is great when you're ahead. It can catch you up from when you're behind. Even if you don't have creatures, it's still nice to take out your opponent's stuff. Sacrificing 2 creatures is a lot different than sacrificing 1. I have a pretty good confidence that I can hit something good when you're sacrificing 2. With 1, maybe they have a random land or elves out and it blocks it. But 2 is much more harder to dodge. 2
creatures per person. People get squirrely when you like hit them with a flesh bag and it's 1 creature per person.
Seriously.
But 2, that's probably a good chunk of their board unless they have a bunch of just useless little 1/1s.
Exactly. So we did mention life gain decks earlier, and we talked about cards that are hard to replace that win the game. How about Aetherflux Reservoir at $15? It's a 4-mana artifact. Whenever you cast a spell, you gain 1 for each spell you cast this turn, and if you pay $50, Low price of 50 life, you deal 50 damage to any target. This is not even just a life gain card.
This is just the laser beam that can be the final nail in the coffin of your life gain deck. I think that it's very funny to get laser beam too, but if you want to play this a little sweatier, this goes in a 3-card combo, or if you just want to play it for the life gain effect, you just will be racking up life in no time, especially if you have little baubles or just can chain a bunch of little spells together.
But the secret thing I was alluding to is it's also a spellslinger card. If you just ignore the fact that you want to gain life and you just take the I want to cast spells, you're going to be at 100 life before you know it, and you don't need any extra life gain. You can just start nuking people. And the other thing this does that we talk about is a very powerful position to be in Commander is you start holding people hostage. If I'm at 70 life and each of the opponents knows that I have to die, none of them wants to make the first move because they're going to die. I will happily just nuke them. They know this. It's face-up information. That leads them to be more likely to pass and put the trouble onto the next person. And if it gets back to your turn, none of them survive.
Yeah, it's just at instant speed you can just laser beam somebody. That is such a powerful effect. It's not at sorcery speed, just like, okay, I'll sit here and your go, really. It's whatever you want, really.
Yeah, but this card goes in so many decks. It goes in life gain decks, spellslinger decks, and a lot of artifact decks kind of still want to scoop this because if they're going to be casting a lot of things, this is a great finisher.
It's a good card. Definitely check it out. The next card, I'm so happy to see at $3. It's Aven Interrupter, 1 white for a 2/2 with flash and flying. When it ETBs, exile target spell, and then it becomes plotted. Spells your opponents cast from graveyards or from exile cost 2 more to cast. I like this for a lot of reasons. It can eat a counter spell if you really want, and it just taxes things that might be for free to begin with. That's your Cascade decks, that's like the Prosper decks, just things in general that are already getting a lot of free casting from exile value. You're going to be able to tax, and they're going to be able to do so much less.
This is effectively a white counter spell, and it is a very, very good one. The timing of spells is extremely important, and if you disrupt that, a lot of times, if we're talking about a threatening spell, which I hope we are because we're trying to counter it, this can ruin their game plan or turn the spell into not threatening. There are plenty of board states where a Rise of the Dark Realms is very, very threatening, but when it's face up for an entire turn cycle, the rest of the table has more of a chance to deal with it, and somebody can drop an Exile All Graveyards or a Bajuka Bog and take out the most relevant stuff. Or if it's a counterspell, like you said, if someone tries to counter your thing and you respond with Aven Interrupter and counter it, that counterspell can never be cast because there won't ever be a sorcery speed target for it because plotting restricts it to sorcery speed on a later turn. So Aven Interrupter does a lot of stuff. It is cheap. It is repeatable if you want to blink or recur this or bounce it back to your hand. And it really does tax and counter and disrupt players.
The later turn is just so impactful, and the fact that it's cast from graveyards, there's just not going to be a free dread return with this.
Flashback, no way.
Yeah, that's amazing. And the flashback is usually the cheaper part, so people are trying to mill Beezy, for instance.
It will disrupt me heavily.
But just in general, I don't know, pushing it off to a later turn with face-up information, that's so powerful, especially if it is a very impactful spell. Even if it's something that isn't terribly impactful, but it matters because it's like if you've cast multiple other spells this turn and they're holding their hand and then it's just not relative the later turns, that's still a great disruption for you.
Right, if they take their whole turn to start setting up and playing spells and doing this, and then they play the hammer, the last piece that's going to somehow bring things to a conclusion, and you counter that, their whole turn was for nothing. That can happen a lot of times with, like, someone wants to play a big creature and then an overwhelming stampede. It's like, no, counter that, send it over here. Now if the board gets wiped, you just have a useless card for now.
Or the things that are like sacrifice at the beginning of the next end step. Oh, I'm going to end it right here. No, you're not.
Yeah, no. Yeah, your little, like, 1-2 punch if you want to play something that is going to prevent a downside for you, and I counter it, and now your whole turn and maybe your whole game is ruined. I think Aven Interrupter is just so much utility for so little mana. It's three mana.
I know this is pretty obnoxious too, but it is enters the battlefield exile target spell. If you can flicker this, that would be so obnoxious because you don't have to cast it.
And we support this.
This next one, I'm surprised to see a tutor this low. It's Diabolic Intent at $12. 1 and a block for a sorcery, additional cost to cast it, sack a creature. Search your library for a card, put it into your hand, then shuffle. This is Demonic Tutor with a little bit of an extra step because you have to sacrifice a creature. But in a lot of decks, that won't matter as much because if we're playing Mana Dorks or we're playing this later in the game and we're not trying to win immediately, this can still work as a great tutor.
Plenty of decks have sacrifice a creature on a plenty of spells, and this being the same mana cost and the same text box as Demonic Tutor, if you can pay that extra cost, congratulations, you have Demonic Tutor for a third of the price. I don't know what Demonic Tutor is going for, but I know it's way more than $12. This is such a good pickup. The Brothers War reprint is keeping this a little bit lower than it would have been otherwise. It's a messed up card. Tutoring for 2 mana, we know is very, very good. Tutoring for 3 mana is kind of mediocre, but it's exponentially better when you shave a mana off. That's why Vampire Tutor is so good. And this is just a great way to get any card in your deck. I can't tell you what this card does because it's the best card you could ever need in any scenario.
Also, sometimes sacrificing a creature is even better, just giving that opportunity. You know, maybe you want something to die. Maybe the creature that you sacrifice has Skull Clamp on it already and it's accidentally getting buffed by something.
Yeah, I've had it be relevant where, you don't have a sack outlet in play. And if they knew you were trying to sack a creature, they would exile it in response. But if you just put this on the stack, the cost is to sacrifice. So as soon as you announce that you're casting Diabolic Intent, you sacrifice a creature, and now they can respond, but the creature's already dead.
Honestly, this is just really nice. If you're playing a bunch of tutors anyways, this is nice to have in your back pocket. Even if you do sack okay creature that you played turn 4 because you're playing this a little bit later in the game, you're still going to find the best card for you at that time in your deck.
Yeah, this is an A+ Magic card, and when I can pick up an A+ Magic card for $12, I definitely pay attention to that. So we're going to go to a next card. It's a little bit cheaper. It's $2.50. This is Relic of Legends, a 3-mana artifact that taps for a mana of any color. And you can tap an untapped legend you control to add 1 mana of any color. So this is a 3-mana rock, which we normally do not like very much. But every legend you have, a legendary creature you have that's untapped, now just produces mana through this, and it's of any color.
This is pretty nice. I mean, you're already going to have 1 at your disposal because you have your commander, but usually there are a lot of other legends running around your deck, whether you're using them for little bits of value like your Lothos of the world, or you're just bringing it in and you need it for mana immediately because it has Summoning Sickness and you couldn't use it any other way.
This is a great card if you think about the highest possible use case where it's I have 4 legends and I'm making so much mana. But also if you just have a couple legends in your deck and your commander is something like Imara who wants to be tapped, this is a safe way to tap it without getting it involved in combat and risking it, and you still get all the effects from it. Relic of Legends it has been very, very good, and oftentimes when I look back, if I'm playing against a Legends deck, the card I lost to was Relic of Legends. They got Legends out, sure. They attacked me and I died. But I died because they had 25 extra mana that game.
Yeah, your Joda decks,
our editor, Chris, who's watching this, crushed us with a Piru deck with this card, I think.
Yeah, there's also the Sisay decks.
Yeah, the Sisays of the world. Any Sisay, really. There's a couple different ones.
But this is really going to shine in those decks, and you won't even notice that it's 3 mana because it's going to be producing so much more in the right deck.
And it's important to know that the legend you play, if you play Relic of Legends and then a legendary creature, that creature doesn't need Summoning Sickness. It doesn't care that it has Summoning Sickness. You can just make a mana right away. And with that mana, you could probably go on Moxfield.com to spend the mana and then create a deck, because at Moxfield.com, building decks only costs 1 mana. Did you know that?
It is so easy to build a deck on Moxfield.com. You can see everything in a very neat visual grid or a text box or whatever you want, really. And I do like the fact that if you are using Redacted, you can actually import your lists from there, or if you somehow have them in a text list too, just import it in. It'll just paste it in and it'll look way nicer. It's
so easy. Honestly, I've woken up to 5 new decks on our account because one of us built decks in our sleep because it's just too easy to do.
It is so easy. You could do it while sleepwalking.
You can do it while sleep typing. And we're going to move to our next card. It's Professional Facebreaker. We have not talked about this in a hot minute, I think. And it's up to $11, but I still think it's pretty good. It's 2 in a red for a 2/3 menace. When one or more creatures you control hit a player, get a treasure. And that would be good enough, but we can sacrifice treasure to Impulse Draw, and we can play the card this turn. Red decks are really hurting for card draw, but they're not really hurting for punching people in the face. This sees that, and it goes, hey, you can slot me into pretty much most red aggressive decks, red combat decks, even blue-red decks with flyers, and I'm going to give you not only mana, but cards.
It does a little bit of everything, and it has a little bit of protection for itself because it has menace. It's not like this can be chump blocked that easily. With 2 damage, that's not that threatening when everyone starts at 40 life, so if you spread it around, it actually might fly under the radar for a little bit.
This card definitely does that, and it shines in treasure decks as well, where you're making a lot of treasures from other sources. We were talking about this card being good without any of that, but if you have other cards, maybe even your commander that make treasures, Now you're just ripping through your library, finding more cards that make treasures, and it's just going to be a repeating cycle because treasures make mana. So if you don't need to sack them for cards, sack them to play the cards.
I have this in Baloth, and it's really good because he makes treasures when goaded attacking or blocking creatures die. I have just a surplus of there, and so I either need the mana, which is fine, or if I need cards, I just use this. And coming down at 3 mana is a good like setup type deal because you can swing with him pretty easily and then also just have him later.
This even does work in artifact decks where you don't even care that they are treasures, but it just says enough artifacts are entering the battlefield and you can replace themselves with cards to find more artifacts, and it just fuels all your stuff. I have this in a Brutaclad deck because it makes tokens also. Like, the treasures are just very usable by a lot of different archetypes.
It's useful in so many decks, especially since red just likes to punch. So if you were considering it, go pick it up. It's an amazing 3-drop. But another amazing card that can slot into a lot of different types of decks is Seedboard Muse at $9. 3 green for a 2/4. Untap all permanents you control during each other player's untap step. It goes from my untap step to our untap step.
Yes, Prophet of Krufix is a banned Magic card, and I think it's appropriately banned because it's very, 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 very silly. This card is kind of close. You have to have another hoop to jump through. You're going to need a way to spend mana, flash on your spells, some kind of activated ability from your commander or whatever. But once you have that, you're essentially taking 4 turns per rotation. That's more than enough turns to win the game. If this card sits around for too long in the decks that want to play it, you're dead.
I mean, activated abilities are so easy to have stapled onto commanders nowadays. Whether that's just getting multiple like Thrasios activations, or I have it in Lathril and it's amazing. Or if you just can funnel mana into like Helix Pinnacle, for instance.
Yeah, it even makes a crappy card like Helix Pinnacle scary. If I have 12 lands in play, you're not scared of Helix Pinnacle. That would take me forever to win. But if with Seedboard Muse, assuming I do nothing else, it's like 2 cycles.
It says permanent, so maybe you will get a lot of value out of it. Maybe you need more cards and you can untap like your War Room, or for instance.
Yeah, you're untapping everything. So all your extra lands, your utility lands, you can even just do that.
It's just a lot of value, and for 5 mana in mono green, because you could put it in any deck that runs green, it's really easy to get to. I could see this coming down on turn 3 pretty easily with enough ramp.
It's another card that's not super easy to replace. There, Prophet of Krufix is on the throne, I guess is in a jail cell somewhere. And this is like the heir to that throne. And then after that, you've kind of got some jankier ways to untap your lands, or they untap creatures, but nothing really untaps everything. So for $9, you're getting a very unique card. Would highly recommend. I would also highly recommend this next card, which is won me so many games I lost count. It's Living Death, $5, 3 black sorcery. Each player exiles all creatures from their graveyard, then sacrifices all creatures they control, then puts all the exiled cards onto the battlefield. So it switches your in-play and graveyard zones in a way that makes sense for the rules of Magic. But if you've got 30 creatures in your graveyard, you get them all for 5 mana. You just get them. It is a slight problem that your opponents get all of their dead stuff as well. If they're not playing a deck that has creatures, or if they're not playing a graveyard deck, it rarely matters. And most of the time, even if they had 50 creatures, the creatures you get are going to win you the game right now.
I mean, you're only going to be playing it into an idea where it's like you have the best board. Maybe you wait to fire off that removal spell until the thing that you want is already on the field, and then you just kill it again. It's not that big of a deal, but you're always going to have the best one because you're going to be playing this in a graveyard deck, and you're going to be milling, you're going to be sacrificing your own thing, and you're going to get a big board out of it.
Even just having Living Death in your deck, and maybe you have some tutors like Diabolic Intent to find it, even just the presence of it in your deck warps how the game needs to be played because your opponents won't even know it. You can sit there and do basically nothing except play Satyr Wayfinder and slowly mill yourself and just kind of get card selection and hit all your land drops. You can just sit there for the entire game, resolve this one spell without your opponents having any idea it's coming, and you just win the game on the spot.
It's so powerful. If you're running this and you're running the other guy, Bringer of the Last Gift, you're going to be running it in a deck that can really take advantage of it, and it's going to be so powerful for you.
It's really, really strong. I think it's one of the cheapest I win buttons that you really can get to. 5 mana. You just have to set it up with other cards by milling over the course of the game.
That's pretty easy to do, though. I mean, there's so many little cards that's like, oh, mill 2 cards, and it's so just non-threatening that people aren't going to be like, get him, he's milling, and except for if you're me, because I know what BZ does.
I'm going to resolve Perpetual Timepiece on turn 2 and then go, wee, wee. wee, and eventually, living death.
And then he's going to win right there. It's even possible that if you have enough good interactions, you might even win when you get all of your stuff back, too, depending on what you run.
There's a lot of loops with Eternal Witness, and a Prairigan Drake can also untap the lands that you are going to use to play Living Death. So already that's infinite. You can just continuously cast that card and loop everything, and it's just going to go very, very well for you. And it works well with sack outlets as well, because if you have a board state, you don't really want to lose it. But if you sack all your creatures first and you can guarantee that it resolves, you don't lose anything. You just get all the stuff back. It's even better.
I mean, you're going to be playing this in a graveyard deck, right? So in theory, you will have sack outlets.
For sure.
So you might just only gain from this.
Absolutely. And a card that can actually find Living Death, although I don't know if they are best friends forever because this is an instant. It's Mystical Tutor at $11. Search for an instant or sorcery, reveal it, shuffle your deck, put it on top. And it's only a single blue. A single blue instant tutor that finds most relevant blue cards, because it searches for instants or sorceries, is pretty high tier Magic the Gathering.
I'm happy to see that a lot of the tutors are down because of the remastered sets. I mean, this was up there for a really long time, along with like Vamp and Enlightened and that sort.
It's in that sort of family.
Because it's so cheap and it's so powerful. Tutoring and just selecting the best card out of your deck, especially early in the game, is so powerful.
Yeah, I always look at these cards and I assume that they're out of my price range, but I could easily pick this up for a deck. $11 is not as much of a hike as I think that this thing used to be. I'm picturing this as a $40 card in my head, but it's seen a lot of reprints. Not even that recent. This could just be me, but Mystical Tutor 11, totally worth picking up. It's one of the best blue tutors.
Especially if you're trying to rush to a win. I mean, maybe you're looking for something in particular. Maybe this is what finds you Approach of the Second Sun instead of just stalling out the game. Who knows?
Yeah, for those decks who put Approach of the Second Sun and they can't do anything else, please play Mystical Tutor. I'm begging you to end the game. And we have another tutor, because this is the tutors episode. We have a green one, Court of Calling, X, green, 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 instant, convoke, search for a creature with mana value X or less, put it onto the battlefield, then shuffle, and it's $6. This is one of the best green tutors. It puts it into play right now at instant speed, and you can use your creatures to tap for it. So even if you're tapped out on mana, this can be a complete surprise.
Now this is best friends with Seedborn Muse. I have
Now
these two in a deck together. It's amazing.
It finds Seedborn Muse.
It really does. It's just the Convoke makes it so powerful, just like Clever Concealment. Just being able to be tapped out of mana and then still fire off something impressive is amazing, and your opponents won't see it coming.
Yeah, the instant speed is huge. It's very, very relevant. Same thing with Mystical Tutor. It's like end step, surprise, here's the rift I needed. You didn't know that I needed it, and now you're going to waste your turn because you didn't play around this. Same things with Court of Calling. You think I don't have a sack outlet, but I actually do. And now, your board wipe might suck now. If you're like trying to play a Sunfall or something, and you think that my creatures are going to get exiled, boom, response, tap 4 creatures, cast it, get Visceracy, or put them in the graveyard where I want them.
Onto the battlefield, too, not even tapped. There's no, you just have to pay the cost plus a little extra.
Yeah, and the little extra is very, very feasible. So $6, please buy these cards if you are needing to power up your decks, because tutor is one of the best ways to do that, but not every tutor is affordable, and I think we've captured some of the best ones here.
Yeah, I'm really happy to see that tutors are getting to be more affordable. I do like the higher powers of Magic, and I do like the fact that more people can play it now.
And now it's time for some nonsense, because we talked about cards that are worth buying that you should put in your commander decks. Now we're going to talk about the speculation game, where once a month we each buy 5 copies of a card with the hopes that it will go up, because we're competing against each other to see who can gain the most money and read the market the best. So the most previous month, I am up $0 from last month on my card that I spec'd on. Mia is up 50 cents. So she's sort of beating me for this month. We will have a year wrap up to come. But my spec for this month is Lightning Runner. It's $1.50, and this is an energy payoff. It makes energy, and you can pay a bunch of energy to get an extra combat. I don't think this card's that good, but I do think this card says energy on it. And I know the energy precon is premiering soon, and there's always, always, always cards that have existed for years that are amazing with whatever new precon commander comes out, and they spike. And so I got my eye on this one, and I think it will go up.
I think that the energy hype from Fallout would have made one of these cards go up to begin with. Gonti's Aetherheart, I think, was the one that went up during the Fallout energy one.
It's a fair point. And Aetherflux too.
Yeah, but I didn't put my eggs in the basket of energy because I just watched a bunch of energy cards go up. Mine is actually on Roaring Earth. It's 39 cents, and it is a mono green card that cares about lands entering the battlefield. There's a Landfall Simic deck. that is one of the pre-cons of Modern Horizons 3, and I'm kind of banking on that. It's only 39 cents, so it's not that much for me to spec on. Plus, it was only printed in Neon Dynasty, which means it is harder to get a copy of, because even though it was only an uncommon there, it was only printed once.
Yeah, you're shooting for, you aim really low with a cheap card, and if it goes up to $1, you're feeling pretty good about that, and you can make the money that way. I'm hoping for, I think $1.50 is a lot to spend on a spec when you're buying multiple cards, but I'm hoping for a big payoff. I want it to go up to $10, and then I flip them and feel cool.
I'm playing for percentage points over here.
If you're playing for percentage points and you want to buy more cards while getting the best bang for your buck, the last month of Most Worth Buying is just a click away. It's right here.